The front door creaked shut, and the house swallowed the sound of my boots on the hardwood. I stood frozen, keys dangling from my hand, as Sarah's voice drifted from the kitchen, soft, secretive, like a prayer she didn't want me to hear. "He doesn't suspect a thing," she whispered. My chest tightened, a fist squeezing my lungs. Who was she talking to? Why did her words feel like a blade slipped between my ribs? The living room smelled of lavender candles, their flickering glow casting shadows on the walls we'd painted together 10 years ago. Photos of our kids, Ellie and Max, grinning at Disneyland, gap-toothed and carefree, lined the mantel. I'd been a good husband. A good father. Hadn't I? The doubt gnawed at me, a quiet rustle in the back of my mind, like leaves skittering across pavement in the dark. I edged toward the kitchen, my socks silent on the floor. Sarah's back was to me, her phone pressed to her ear, her shoulders hunched as if shielding a secret. I know, she said, her voice low but urgent. It's just he's always here. Working from home now. It's harder to, she stopped, sensing something, and turned. Her eyes met mine, wide and startled, like a deer caught in headlights. The phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the counter. "Tom," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early." I wanted to ask who was on the phone. I wanted to scream. Instead, I mumbled, "Traffic was light." My voice sounded foreign, hollow. She nodded too quickly, brushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear. A nervous habit I'd once found endearing. Now it felt like a signal I'd missed for years. Dinner was quiet. Ellie, 16, scrolled on her phone, her fork pushing peas around her plate. Max, 12, rambled about soccer practice, oblivious to the tension coiling between his parents. Sarah's laugh was too bright, her questions too eager. "How was work, Tom?" she asked, as if she hadn't just been whispering secrets. I stared at my plate, the mashed potatoes blurring into a pale smear. "Fine," I said, the word heavy, like it carried the weight of every unanswered question. That night, I lay awake, Sarah's steady breathing beside me a cruel contrast to the storm in my head. I replayed her words. "He doesn't suspect a thing." Had I missed something? The late-night texts she'd dismissed as work stuff? The weekends she'd spent with friends I'd never met? I'd trusted her, loved her, built a life with her. But now, every memory felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. The next morning, I pretended to leave for work. I drove around the block, parked, and slipped back into the house through the garage. My heart pounded as I crept upstairs to our bedroom. Sarah was gone, off to her part-time job at the gallery, she'd said. I opened her laptop, the one she never let me touch. "It's just for work," she'd always said, laughing it off. My fingers trembled as I typed her password, Ellie's birthday. It worked. Emails. Hundreds of them. From someone named C. Short, cryptic messages. "Meet me at the usual spot. Miss you already." My stomach churned. I scrolled further, finding photos, Sarah and a man I didn't recognize, his arm around her waist, her smile brighter than it had been with me in years. The dates stretched back months. Years. My breath caught, sharp and jagged, like I'd swallowed glass. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, the room spinning. The kids' laughter from old home videos echoed in my mind, clashing with the betrayal burning in my chest. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but something stopped me. Fear maybe, or the desperate hope I was wrong. Over the next week, I became a ghost in my own life. I watched Sarah like a detective, noting every glance at her phone, every vague excuse. She'd started wearing perfume again, the kind she hadn't touched since our early days. She hummed while cooking, a lightness I hadn't seen in years. Each detail was a splinter under my skin, proof of a life she was living without me. Friday night, she said she was meeting a client. I followed her. The kids were at sleepovers, the house dark behind me as I tailed her car through the city. She pulled into a dimly lit parking lot behind a bar I'd never heard of. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel. A man stepped out of the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, the same man from the photos. They embraced, her body melting into his in a way that made my throat close. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove home, the city lights blurring through tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. The house felt emptier than ever, the the silence screaming her absence. I poured a whiskey, then another, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photos on the mantel. Ellie and Max. They deserved better than this. Better than us. The next morning, Sarah was all smiles, oblivious to the fracture she'd caused. "You okay, Tom?" she asked, pouring coffee. Her concern felt like a mockery. I nodded, my jaw tight, and left for work. But I didn't go to the office. I went to a lawyer, then a private investigator. If I was going to lose everything, I'd do it on my terms. Weeks later, the investigator handed me a file. Bank accounts I didn't know about. Hotel receipts. A second phone. The man's name, Chris, her colleague. Every detail was a punch, but the worst was a letter, tucked in an email draft she'd never sent. "I love you, Chris, but I can't leave Tom." "Not yet." The kids. I confronted her that night. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet, the lavender candles unlit. "Who's Chris?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage clawing at my chest. Her face crumpled, guilt and defiance warring in her eyes. "It's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off, slamming the file on the table. Receipts spilled out, undeniable. She cried. She begged. She said it was a mistake, that she loved me, that she'd end it. But her words felt like ash, scattering in the wind. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. She looked away, her silence louder than any confession. "I was lonely," she whispered finally. "You were always working. Always distant. I wanted to scream that I'd been here, that I'd loved her, that I'd built my world around her. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I walked out, the door slamming behind me. Months later, I stood in a new city, a new life. The divorce was finalized, the kids split between us. I'd sold my share of the business, walked away with millions and vanished. Sarah didn't know where I'd gone. Neither did the kids, who'd called me a coward for leaving. But I wasn't running. I was rebuilding. I bought a house by the ocean. The waves a constant roar that drowned out the pain. I started a foundation for kids like Ellie and Max, kids caught in the wreckage of broken homes. I didn't need revenge. I needed purpose. But late at night, when the whiskey burned my throat, I wondered if Sarah ever regretted it. If she ever realized what she'd lost. The phone rang. Ellie's name flashed on the screen. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling. "Mom's engaged. To him." The words hit like a freight train. I closed my eyes, the ocean roaring outside. "I'm here, kid," I said, my voice steady. "Always." And in that moment I knew I hadn't vanished. I'd survived.